Hello. My name is Peter Pilgrim. I am a Java engineer, and this young lady is looking at a Java book with interest. And actually, this is stock photography from nappy.co. And as you can see, she has sat next to a compiler design, a book in C++, advanced C++. I might have even read it. Yeah, I think that might be Stuart or Ian Copeland or anyway. 22 years ago, I was just like this young lady and very interested and about learning this new programming language called Java. And as I record this in January 2021, I'm going to talk to you really about this contracting and why I have found contracting beneficial to me, especially personally. My name is Peter Pilgrim again. I'm a Java champion independent contractor. First of all, we need some historic context. We know in January 21, we're in the midst of the pandemic, which came last year, and life began. We did have a life before COVID-19, at least for me, I did. So a little brief history about my career. I graduated from a London university, and I now have over 25 years professional experience. My first professional job was as a Fortran 77 programmer in Germany, not in England, in southern Germany. And it stood me in good stead, as they said, because eventually I came back to Britain, to London, England. And through some companies, I eventually found myself inside the burgeoning banking sector, investment banking IT, as it was called. So I've worked in the city of London, the Square Mile, and the Docklands. And I found the noughties a time of exciting growth. And even before the millennium, it started to grow, and I discovered my first enterprise Java beans, my first applets, my first programming with Java database connectivity, JDCB as they call it. Nowadays, I call myself a cloud native engineer. I still specialize in Java development and programming, but there's so much more to it. There's a whole ecosystem. It has spread throughout the world. No pun intended, of course. And I've worked with Spring Framework, Spring Boot. I help client code, deploy their applications and build applications that work in the cloud, whether that is Pivotal Cloud Foundry, on AWS, through a Docker container, or through Kubernetes. And most of my work revolves around common open source libraries, and I really now deploy applications on a standalone on-premise server. I've had two contracting phases in my career so far. My first phase began when I thought I was interviewing for a permanent job in the banking sector. But instead of me getting a permanent job offer, they turned around, how about a contract instead? And this was 2003. And at first I thought on this offer, I'm going to do it, because at that time the world went through a mini recession or mini downfall within banking, and so I chanced my arm to take up contracting, and it was a far easier prospect. And then at the end of 2007, I gave up contracting for a friend of a friend to become a full-time employee again. And I had good fortune more than sense, because you know what happens next through historical contexts. Lehman Brothers, the great banking fall of 2008, and it was luck that I found a berth to landing to steer this boat into a harbour. And then I left banking again. In 2013, I entered this new world of digital agency work and what I would call non-investment banking from 2013 onwards. I still have gone back into, I guess, retail banking, such as mortgages and lending, which is not what we call casino banking, and probably will never go back there. And I am still a contractor now as I record it in this video in January 2021. And if you're watching in post-COVID land, then bully for you. So let's get on with my 5 observations, rules, that and sort of insights. I would really call these insights. Too late to change the slides now. That got me into contracting, that kept me there. The number 1 rule, or the insight of non-promotions. What does that mean? Well, as I worked as a young software engineer, the first professional gig, and that contracting terminology again was in Germany. I worked with some really great scientists, great software engineers. They had discipline, strong work ethic. My first company, therefore, is a joint venture, what we would call a startup, which is funded through 2 separate larger companies. And my company then helped write scientific software, which is why they needed someone who knew Fortran 77 from a university to help with their coding. Germans are kind of known for their being reserved. I found them to be the opposite. Once you got to know Germans, and now of course everybody's different, I found him to be very caring, empathetic, with feeling. And one of those Germans was my team leader. And he asked me about what conferences, what did I want to do with my career. And he told me to choose a conference in Germany and go to this conference and learn something new. And that was truly amazing. Of course, what did I choose? I chose a C++ conference that was happening, I think, in Munich in Germany. And I met a few people there that I would still count as friends today who, okay, a little bit emotional there. But the company paid all the expenses, the hotel bills, the train fare, and the Bundesbahn was pretty good then. I know it's pretty bad now. And the hotel bill, the food, the conference ticket, and I did this a few times. And then even the company paid for my ticket, because it was a startup, to go and attend the exhibit in CeBIT, which is in Hanover. This was one of the biggest conferences, exhibitions, expos I've ever seen in my life, with lots of hallers. Now I'm getting beside myself. This was a little company, a German company that did this. I mean, I don't want to go down that political road about the German efficiencies, but it was a little eye-opener of the things to come that I kind of would miss. But I missed home. I was a graduate. I had worked in Germany for 3 or 4 years, and eventually I got homesick and I left Germany. And I returned in the middle of towards the end of the Britpop thing, Oasis versus Blur, and Jarvis Cocker and Pope, and him storming the stage with Michael Jackson. Not a good look. But in any case, Germany still had the Deutschmark, and Spain still had the Peseta, whatever. And there was no such thing as the euro, and Brexit was a non-entity. So let me continue my young observation of the software entwickler back in the UK. back in England, as they say, and this was some years before Ricky Gervais's TV sitcom. And the reason why I bring politics in, because I witnessed some of the, I suppose, British English politics happening, which made Ricky Gervais's show, The Office, so pertinent and a win with me, because I immediately saw this reflected in, I guess, the rat ways, where I was new in a company, perhaps 3 or 4 months in a company, and 2 colleagues in my division team group were vying for promotion. And the question was, who would get promotion? Person A had been with Client Co, another contractor term, for 3 or 4 years continuously. Person B had been with Client Co for about 1 or 2 years, let's say 18 months, and then left Client Co and went contracting when it was really good, when IR35 was, nobody cared too much about it. But then person B returned to Client Co. Who got the promotion? Person B was promoted to lead developer and became a manager. And you can guess the feelings of person A. Gender, race, creed, it doesn't matter. When you see loyalty, now person A had been with the company for up to 4 years, and perhaps since being a graduate recruited person, and I'll come back on this later with that stat, it taught me that loyalty in a company shouldn't be so, and that was my first kind of disappointing observation. And then anyway, so observational insight number 2 is the rule of laxative continual professional development, and this is a retort. Peter, how does that help the business? This is a retort to me when I asked the question, and really what was unsaid, that they really didn't give a Willy Wonka. I should just be an engineer and just code and mind my own business. Essentially, I became tired of begging training. Now, I was still permanent as a full-time employee in the early noughties. And all my heroes were Java heroes, and the people who spoke at great conferences. People like Simon Ritter. I first met Simon Ritter at Sun Microsystems on a lunchtime day talk somewhere near London Bridge. And now Simon is the Deputy Chief Technology Officer at Azul, and they make great JVMs and make Java go fast. And I wanted to go to the biggest conference of all for Java then, Java 1 in San Francisco. Fortunately, although I worked in banking, I didn't have the big money. And I thought naively, if I asked my big banking company, my boss, could I use my training budget, which is probably £1,500 back in the year, whatever, noughties, per FTE, to go to this conference? So my boss refused. He said, or they said, how does C++, Java X help the business? And when I heard that answer, my knuckles dragged on the floor. Of course, I did retort back, well, you've got to come up with better approach than this, was the answer. And I didn't get my Java 1 conference, not through the bank, but it showed me then that although companies can promise you the earth with conferences, or if you really want to achieve that next level of technology, you either have to fund it yourself or start thinking beyond your company. And it really depends on your business, really. And that led me down to the path of contracting, which I eventually took years later. The insight number 3 is unconscious bias. And what I mean by that is, I guess, prejudice and racism. During my career, I have been asked by family, when are you going to get a real job? And the context of that, the real talk is engineering versus management. Now, I've seen developers who are much older than me and well at the beginning of their 70s and still doing a consulting job. And programming, I should tell you, is not about how fast you code or how many lines of code you code. It's about creative thinking and problem solving. And you can be young or the oldest person in the team. It's about productivity. That's the case here. And there's probably a little bit of ageism. I can see myself developing software and being hands-on for another 20 years, it feels like. Eventually your body does give up and maybe we'll do things slightly different. I probably will have to take up more management and more leadership responsibilities and helping teams and be a more facilitator. But the other pertinent question, at least to me, that I have been asked, not just by family members, is where are the other black software developers? I can honestly say in the last 10 years, I have seen more BAME engineers, particularly black engineers, testers and designers than ever before, especially when I left the banking world in 2013. People, young people, why would they go into investment banking IT? The noughties, as I said, was probably the time where it was really exciting because the people were using new technologies, such, not just Java. Nowadays, it's going to be legacy in banking IT, at least, and that's my opinion. Anyway, you might have a different. And the other question I have been asked is, where are the black higher up executives? So where are the black CEOs, CIOs, chief technology officers, IT directors? And sadly, I don't know. As I said, I like hands-on and I prefer to be that, and I don't really want to be stuck in a 9-to-5 meetings all day. And there are some people who are good at that job and that's great for them. But I guess to outsiders to information technology, it is a pertinent and real question to ask. In my decades of experience, I have met with 2 UK black IT directors or chief technology officers equivalents, and one definitely was in the USA. Reggie, you're out there somewhere. So that is about 3 definites. It's probably more that I have met or have gone to conferences that we just didn't meet up in time, because you meet so many people in conferences and so many faces that I guess there has to be more than 3. Okay, right? Okay, so number 4, rule of money over controversy. Be your own boss, and you can be in a contracting position. You can be your own boss, especially if you run your own limited personal services company, and this is bound to change if you're on the wrong side of April 2021 and Her Majesty's government, Revenue and Customs and Excise Services closed down with IR35, then we're in a different land. But I fully expect this to happen, come April 2021, and a reminder, I'm recording this in January. So what I loved about contracting is that I just got paid the dollar bill, as somebody once told me in America. When I was a young permie, I witnessed a contractor walk into the office, and they said that they bought a house in Kingston, London for 125k in 1999. And when I was young, that was definitely the ambition to own property. And that was also, I guess, a marker. Maybe I could do contracting. I was still full-time employment then. And what I can tell you now, contractor money alleviates the controversy. The money does talk. You get paid for your skill set. It doesn't matter what color, creed, gender, transgender, binary. I've met 2 great transgender, non-binary people, and in the last 5 years, probably more. And basically, if you're not up to it, then the client will bin you. And one of those people is a penetration tester I met at a conference which I gave a couple of years ago now. Yeah, so money talks, and this is the reason why lots of people prefer contracting, because the office politics just goes away. You got a problem with my race or what I look like, at least I'm getting paid, and you can do what you like. I don't also have to stick around. So performance reviews are gone. So essentially you are your own boss. You should be if you work as a contractor, and you spend your own limited company's money on conferences, training and certs. So immediately with contracting, begging training is gone. You can claim tax expenses against your limited company if you are outside IR 35. If you're inside, come April 2021, that is gone. And the final and fifth insight of what I liked about contracting is about risk. It's about the client engagement is not forever. And my biggest mistake, and lots of contractors' biggest mistakes, is resting on your laurels. And I'm a Java champion, and what I would say that contracting gives you is, if you change your client code, you need to stay sharp, you need to train hard, to work hard, to play hard. You're working to live. You don't live to work, although some people prefer living to work, but I definitely work to live, and to enjoy the good times in life. And I like that sharpness and the risk. Competition is good for the soul. So you don't get stuck in yesterday's technology. I don't know anyone using Java 6 or 7. Most people are even looking at Java 8 and thinking it's legacy. We better get off it. So I like the idea of taking a risk. And some people are risk averse because they've got family or young children, or they're looking for stability of employment. But COVID, as we know, has changed that with all the furloughs and the changes from the Chancellor Rishi Sunak. I'll get his name right. And you get to see the world of clients. And if you're lucky enough with Client Co, you get to see a new technology before it jumps to the mainstream. And I saw Scala, I saw Java Effects, I saw Spring Framework, I saw Kotlin. I got even involved with Golang, much to my chagrin. Yeah, you name it. Like cloud came along, Pivotal Cloud Foundry, Kubernetes, AWS came along, and all these things wouldn't have happened if I just rested on my backside, or stayed with a company that was taking my professional development some other direction, maybe south. by going around with working with different clients, I really enhance my diversity in knowledge and people and cultures and people, and it's kept me fresh. And bear in mind that the average IT industry turnover is about 2.5 years that someone will stick around in the company. I suspect in post-COVID this is going to be slightly longer, because people want stability and to be less risk averse. They want to be more risk averse, excuse me. So I would expect that to grow perhaps to 3 years, that average to taper upwards. Bear in mind also probation. When I became a full-time employee in 2008, I think it was again, and for those years, probation was 3 months. I shockingly have heard that probation can last up to 12 months, and this is because companies are allowed to extend your probation period if they are truly not happy. And then if there's worries about restructuring and you don't get it, you could be 2 years into a gig. You need up to 2 years into a gig to generate from any restructuring or redundancy. So there you go. So you get 2 sharp ends of the rod there. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say in my 5 insights. I have written a course if you want to improve your personal performance in Java technology, want to ace that career strategy and build a sustainable software engineering path. That's the course for you if you're interested. If you want to get in touch with me informally, you can find me on Twitter at Peter Pilgrim. For business, I prefer LinkedIn, and I do have a website. Anyway, I bid you adieu, and I hope you've enjoyed this one. I'll see you.